everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. So we're starting a new chapter. This is chapter 47a. We're going to start with some Tehillim. Hallelu et Adonai kol goim shebechu kol haomim ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai leolam hallelujah. And this one is called Garments of Glory. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach says, when the Holy One, blessed be He, descended to give the Torah to Israel, 600,000 ministering angels descended with them, opposite the 600,000 mighty ones of Israel. And in their hands were weapons and crowns, and they crowned Israel with the crown of the holy name of God. Okay, so we can see another viewpoint of this actually from Masechet Shabbat 88a. We'll get into this. Rabbi Sinai taught, when Israel accorded precedence to the declaration, we will do, over the declaration, we will hear, na'aseh v'nishma, as in, you want the Torah? We will do everything it's in it. Now what's in it? That's basically what happened. Why? Because it's coming from God. Obviously, we're going to do it, right? Na'aseh v'nishma, 600,000 ministering angels came and tied 2 crowns to each and every member of the Jewish people, one corresponding to we will do, na'aseh, and one corresponding to we will hear, nishma. Again, this entire world we are in the world of asiyah, the world of action. At the end of the account of creation, asher bara Elohim la'asot, which God created in order to do. We have to do in this world. It's not just enough to feel or to believe. That is good. I mean, really, it's good for nothing. These things can be motivation for you to help you do, but it really comes down to action, right? Show me the money, make that change, and so on. And when the people sinned with the golden calf, 1.2 million angels of destruction descended and removed them from the people, as it is stated in the wake of the sin of the golden calf, from Exodus 33:6. So the children of Israel divested themselves of their finery from Mount Chorev. Vaitnatzlu bnei Israel et ediyam mehar Chorev. As we've said, during those 40 days of Moses' ascent, death was suspended from the world. Okay? No one died in the world anywhere. Death was suspended from the world as they were spiritually speaking in the same time of Adam before the sin, which is before death came into the world. We've had the correlation between these two instances. And who are these mighty ones of Israel that we're discussing? From Song of Songs 3 7 and 8. הנה מיתתו של שלמה 60 גיבורים סביב לה מגיבורי ישראל. Behold, the litter of Solomon, 60 mighty men are around it, of the mighty men of Israel. כולם אחוזי חרב מלומדי מלחמה, איש חרבו על ירחו מפחד בלילות. They all hold swords, skilled in warfare, each one with his sword on his thigh because of fear at night. So Shishim, 60, refers to how the Torah counts the Shishim Ribo. 600,000 is 60 Ribo. Ribo is 10,000. So 60 times 10,000, that's 600,000. And when we read Song of Songs and see the name Shlomo of Solomon, right? This is not referring to King Solomon, though he did write it, but rather to the Holy One, blessed be He, whose name means Hamelech Shehashalom Lo, the king whom peace belongs to. Melech Malchei Amlachim, right? Meaning that around his bed, meaning the tabernacle, the tribes were camped, and they were numbered at 600,000, all of them mighty men. Beautiful. And in their hands were weapons and crowns. What does this mean? Did the angels bring Israel actual swords, actual crowns? They are no more physical than the reference in Song of Songs. They all hold swords, skilled in warfare, each one with his sword on his thigh. We can read of this in Psalms 149, 5-6 as well. The pious, mighty Israel will exult in glory. They will sing praises on their beds, lofty praises of God in their throats, and a double-edged sword in their hands. יעלוזו חסידים בכבוד, ירננו על משכבותם, ורוממות אל בגרונם, וחרב פיפיות בידם. So really, what are these swords or weapons that were given to Israel by the angels? These are the weapons of war, the perpetual war that man has been fighting since the very beginning, the war against the evil inclination. This isn't a physical sword that you got. That's not what this is about. This is an enemy that exists so long as you exist. This is an enemy that you will not be able to vanquish until the end of days. And this is for our own good. Wherever you go, there it is. And he looks like you, sounds like you, and thinks like you. At some point in life, we're going to realize that all we are, the source of our problems is that it's sort of like, oh, it happened upon us. Now, we know that these problems, right? So, oh, this happened, that happened, this is a coincidence. No, it's not, right? These problems are more like challenges, or biblically speaking, these are trials. We can only ascend through trials. It started with Abraham, continued with the children of Israel after the Exodus. Necessary trials in order to help us not only rise from the pit which we were born into, but also to move us both physically and spiritually. When we point fingers and say, that person did that to me, though it might be truly in a superficial sense, yes, that person indeed did wrong you. Not a thing happens in this world without God say so. And every one of those things that happen is for our benefit. And what bridges the gap between our perception of things and the spiritual reality of things? This is what is called emunah. This is faith. I have friends who unfortunately believe that bad things are being done to them by everyone, everywhere, all the time, in almost every case and instance. This is a very sad reality, and a lot of people are like this as well. Because when you shun responsibility, that means that you are throwing away your free will, which is essentially what separates us from the animals. Everything is done to you, but you don't know why it's done to you. If you knew a little bit about your relationship with God, the reason it's done to you is to get you to return. But if you go through all the other channels to sort of help you cope, if you will, or get over it or move on, but never actually dealing with the root problem, all of which is spiritual, by the way. Every last thing comes down to a spiritual point of origin. It only manifests physically in our reality. And again, this is going back to the calling all Jews thing. God is going to remove all these other things, all these other vices, devices, or whatnot that you can turn to instead of turning to God. And all this is for our benefit. And clearly today, we cannot do this on our own. Some people can, but again, not to the levels that we need to be. We are going to need God's assistance across the board. So that's where we're headed. Okay, so like we said, these challenges, it's very difficult, but you have to understand where it all comes from. But I also have friends who see the challenges they face and are fully aware that this comes from God, knowing that He is tailor-making these trials so that we may overcome in order to face what is next. That is the correct way of thinking. I would easily say that upward of 95% of our nation believe that Hamas are to blame for this whole mess. It's them, it's on them, and them alone. And if there was no more Hamas, life would be peaches and cream. No, it would not. And we all know this by now, but still people don't want to look beyond that. It's too much. Now, make no mistake, Hamas are absolutely responsible. But who do you think sent them and why? And on that specific day of all days, nothing is a coincidence. The connection is still not being made here between people. You say, yes, 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 wow, look, no, that's too much. People will reject this. They will reject the truth because it's too much for them to handle. So the connections are still not being made, and so there will be no resolution until there is an awareness and personal responsibility is being taken. Like we said, why does God do these things to us? Because there's something that we need to look at ourselves. What is the entire concept of anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism does not have a physical reality behind it. There is no reason why people actually hate Jews. There's no the Jews did this, the Jews did that. Which Jews did what? Okay, but that's not what we're talking about right now. Why does the world hate Jews, no matter how much Jews contribute to society? Because when we forget who we are, God said, okay, through the nations, I'm going to remind you who you are. It doesn't matter if you're left wing or right wing, who you voted for, where you live, how much you embrace the enemy that is desperately trying to kill you. They don't care. You're a Jew. Thank you for that reminder. And there's nobody else that we can rely on except our Heavenly Father. See how that works? Okay, so now, since the golden calf, we must be aware of these dangers that surround us, as well as those who dwell inside of us. That's even worse. These are the arms that we take up. Through Torah and mitzvot, this is what those swords are, right? And the faith that everything, good and evil, light and darkness, all comes from God, as said in Isaiah 45:7, who forms light and creates darkness, who makes peace and creates evil. I am the Lord who makes all these. So everything comes from God. Now you can't say, well, then what kind of God is that? I don't want any part of that God. You're just looking at one aspect over there. You're not looking at any of the responsibility that you have as a human being, as a Noahide, as a Jew. You see, if we don't do what we need to do, these things will come upon us. And this is not to say that if you do all these things will not necessarily come upon you, but it is also how you will view it. That's really what it comes down to. The change, you are placed in these situations. These realities are in fact being done to you, but that's all to create the change inside. We can never make a change externally, only internally. Once we start it within ourselves, that's when we start to actually project, spiritually speaking. Okay, so we just read this. Everything comes from God. Isaiah 45:7. Read that. Comes from God, period. And what of the crowns with God's name on it? Think of a shield. When the darkness or anything else sees that crown, comes near that crown, it can't come near you actually, as it becomes part of you 24/7. That's passive, meaning that crown becomes part of you. And aggressive is the weapons of war to go defeat the darkness, turning it into light. So we have passive and aggressive. So again, and in their hands were weapons and crowns. These are the 600,000 angels that came down to the 600,000 men ages 20 and up from Israel. And they crowned Israel with the crown of the holy name of God. And so long as the days went by before they did that deed, meaning the golden calf, they were greater before the Holy One, blessed be He, than the ministering angels. Greater. Remember what Satan said? He goes, hey, I see a nation amongst the nations that are just like the ministering angels when we were talking about Yom Kippur. Greater than the ministering angels. Like, thank you very much, Satan. We appreciate that, but it's a little bit more over there. All right. So why greater and not likened to? Because as we know, angels cannot ascend, but we can. We can also descend, right? We can go this way. We can go that way. Angels, they cannot do this. Angels exist on the same plane. Obviously, we're talking about going from the firmament here and whatnot, but we're talking about as far as spiritually elevating themselves. They are where they are. Us as humans, because we have the Torah, as Israel, the 7 Noahide laws, we can ascend or descend, which is something angels cannot do. So ultimately, when we do things correct, we can be on a higher level, even than the ministering angels. Angels do not have the Torah. We do. The angels have no inclination. And at that time, neither did we. Hence, greater. And death did not rule over them, our text says. Like we said, death couldn't touch them, like the angels. The Torah was engraved, charut, by the finger of God. Do not say charut, engraved, but rather say cherut, freedom. Exactly the same word, different punctuation. The Torah is what frees us from this evil inclination. How so? First of all, it makes you aware that there is an evil inclination. It shows you clearly what is good and what is not. And what is not good, this is how the rest of the world used to live. So God said, I need you to be separate from them. Therefore, it's not just enough to abide by the 7 Noahide laws for Israel. Yes, you need to do a whole lot more, because you're responsible now to rectify the world. So the Torah is what frees us from this evil inclination. It gives us that knowledge, it gives us that information, and then it shows us how to actually yes, we'll call it overcome, but rather constantly battle. Like we said, there can never be a point where there is more good than evil in the world, because that would set everything off balance. A tree of knowledge of good and evil, they are both equal. The greater spirit, let's say this is the good and this is the evil. The greater spiritually we get, the evil has to rise and meet us accordingly. Otherwise, what's the point? Oh, look, I have no more evil inclination. This only happened to a few individuals throughout the Tanakh. Very exceptional individuals, okay? King David was one of them. Towards the end of his life, the prophetess, he asked, so am I going to come back in a reincarnation, in a Gilgul? You are good. You are done. You completed your tikkun in your lifetime. So David is not going to be reincarnated, only a fraction of his soul, obviously, within Mashiach ben David, but not to come back for any kind of correction that he did not do. Okay, so again, none of us are King David. All right. So, like we said, death couldn't touch them. The Torah is what actually freed them, made them aware, helped them to rise up and constantly battle. So let's be more specific here. If Israel lives according to the Torah and the mitzvot, it gives us the strength we need to free ourselves. Okay? We'll call it that. You have all the tools, but you actually have to fight. This is not going to happen for you. No one is doing this for you. Those are other religions. You have to do for yourself, because you actually can do for yourself. The whole purpose is to try. Are we going to complete it? No. Our sages say, Lo alecha lesayem et hamelecha. It is not your responsibility to conclude the work, meaning that started from the rectification of the world from way back when. But you are also not exempt from doing your part, because we are all a link in the chain. And if you do not do your work, guess what? You are the weakest link. Goodbye. So I hope you see the pattern over here. Whenever Israel got something for free, it always backfired. Always. But when we work for it, the way God intended, hence la'asot, to do, action, deeds, it builds us, and then it stays with us. You could also see this in every situation. Whenever people are handed anything for free, it always gets messed up, because they don't know what it means. They don't know what this responsibility means, and they will take a billionaire's son. If the billionaire's son did not do anything, but he just receives all the money from daddy, what do you think they're going to do with that? Nothing positive. But if they are put through a rigorous routine and understand what it is to work hard, if they understand the value of what it is that they're doing and the value of money, they will look at it differently. It's all a matter of perspective. And that's really what Judaism is all about. It shows you that value of everything. Everything is important. Everything. Every single thing we do. There are blessings for everything. There are kavanot, intentions for every blessing that we do. There are intentions even when we don't do blessings, when we do prayers on every single letter. These already, we're raising the bar here to levels of like Kabbalists and whatnot. Most people cannot do this. But this is as far as people have gone, and we can go a whole lot further. So there's a lot more than, okay, do this and don't do that. It's not about that. You're not here to check boxes. You're here to really connect yourself to the root source, which is the Creator. And how do we do that? Through the chukim and the mishpatim, through the laws and the statutes. And death did not rule over them, it says. And they did not need to relieve themselves just like the angels. Yeah, you heard that correctly. For 40 years in the wilderness, Israel did not have to go potty. And yet, even though Israel could not fill most of the commandments of the Torah since they were not in the land of Israel, you heard? Does not mean they didn't learn about everything. And in our case, though there was potty time for Israel, there was still they would still give the commands to do so. Look at this. Just because they couldn't do it doesn't mean that they didn't receive the commands. Deuteronomy 23, 13, 14. And you shall have a designated place outside the camp so that you can go out there to use it in privacy. You know that's what it is. And you shall keep a spade in addition to your weapons. So like when we went out for war, when I went to the army, guess what? You received your gun and all your gear, and we also received a spade. Why? This is biblical from the 5 books. And you shall keep a spade in addition to your weapons, and it shall be, when you sit down outside to relieve yourself, you shall dig with it, and you shall return and cover your excrement. Look at this. This is incredible stuff. These are laws of morality. These are laws of tzniut, of humility. This law pertains not only to the laws of war, but specifically to the laws of morality and humility to separate us from the animals and the rest of the nations. And why? Next verse. For the Lord your God goes along in the midst of your camp to rescue you and to deliver your enemies before you. Therefore your camp shall be holy, so that he should not see anything unseemly among you and would turn away from you. Here in Israel, we don't have laws against urinating in public. People do it less right now because it is severely frowned upon. But honestly, I mean, when I was a teenager here, people just leaning against buildings, in street corners or whatever. Maybe they should make a law for it. It's definitely a good thing, right? But that's part of don't leave your filth in the street. Don't do it publicly. Don't do it where people can see. There has to be humility when it comes to these things. When we are holy, nothing can touch us. No Hamas, no Hezbollah, no Iran, nobody. But when we are unholy, especially in our own camp, case in point, 2024, then it is we who allow all these uncircumcised Philistines to have their way with us. That's what happens. When we are unholy in the camp, they got permission to come in. When we are holy, nothing enters. If we want the protection of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, do we not have to behave like them? If we want all the goodness that God promised us, do we not have to take responsibility on our end? And since Israel did that deed, the golden calf, the Holy One, blessed be He, was angry with them and said to them, I expected you to be like the ministering angels before me, as said in Psalms 82:6. I said, you are Elohim, and of all you are sons of the Most High. Ani amarti Elohim atem uvnei elyon kulchem. You are all sons of the Most High. However, now because of the sin of the golden calf, death is no longer suspended. And you have become mortal once again. Verse 7, indeed, as man you will die, and as one of the princes you will fall. Rabbi Yehuda says, so long as a man wears his garments of splendor or glory. What are these garments? As we read before in Exodus 33:6. So the children of Israel divested themselves of their finery from Mount Chorev. Vaitnatzlu b'nei Israel et edyam. The word is the original, the root is Adi. Adi is actually a common Hebrew name. It is unisex, but it is really more of a female name. I've also known some male Adis. I guess it's okay, yeah. But anyway, I've known more female Adis. Adi means that it's this very, they said it was almost like a sprinkle of water, but it really is kind of like a garments of glory. So Adi in modern Hebrew, not biblical Hebrew. Modern Hebrew means like a jewel or an ornament, but it actually means garments of light, as in like Adam before the sin. Before they receive the garments of skin, which is ol. Ol is light. Aleph vav resh. That's ol. Sounds phonetically the same as ol. I'm accentuating the ayin. Ayin vav resh is skin. Light, skin, sounds the same. So long as a man wears his garments of splendor or glory, he is beautiful in his appearance and in his honor and in his value. like God commanded the high priest to be clothed from Exodus 28:2. You shall make holy garments for your brother Aaron for honor and glory. Lechavod uletiferet. The garments of the high priest are supposed to be physically represented, are supposed to physically represent the spiritual beauty of Israel's soul. That's why everything is very particular over there. And this was Israel at that time. That's how Israel were when Moses was in the mountain for those 40 days. When they wore the name of God, they were greater before the Holy One, blessed be He, than the ministering angels. Remember, no one would be able to stand these garments if they were not worthy. They absolutely were, because we read it in the text. They had to remove it, meaning they were worthy beforehand. As they, like all things, are conditional upon us, upon our actions. And since they did the deed, the Holy One, blessed be He, was angry with them and told them to remove the garments, as said in Exodus 33:5. And the Lord said to Moses, say to the children of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. If I go up into your midst for one moment, I will destroy you. But now leave off your finery, and I will know what to do to you. ויאמר השם אל משה, אמור אל בני ישראל, אתם עם קשה עורף, רגע אחד אעלה בקרבך, וכיליתיך, ואתה הורד אדייך, from adi, your adis, אדייך מעליך, ואדעה מה אעשה לך. See, God will not punish us so long as we wear these garments of glory, because it's our protection. It's wearing His name, one and the same, not doing anything. The moment they are removed, judgment is to be passed. They were removed from Adam and Eve, and God passed judgment and expelled them and gave them all the curses, which we learned. Then they were also removed from the children of Israel, and God did the same. And so on that night, our text says, 600,000 ministering angels opposite the 600,000 of the mighty men of valor of Israel descended and removed from each and every one of them what they had given them previously. It was a very sad day, I'm sure. Here it says ministering angels, but the Talmud, it says angels of destruction. How do we know that in this case they were one and the same? The hint is in our text. Because it came at night. Okay, this is how we know who they were. And as we know, nighttime is the time of judgment. And so, whenever most angels receive a task, God names them according to that specific task. And it's all about the name. Their name will actually, it's foreshadowing what they have to go and do. But there, in the Pamalya Shel Mala, we call them the higher entourage, there are even higher angels whose names don't change, like, for instance, the archangels, right? Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, those three. But we also have Uriel, who actually has another name, and that is Nuriel. Nuriel, same thing. Why? And guess what? Uri comes from light, Ul Kasdim, what is it? Ul Kasdim is the Chaldeans, but the Ul, fire, meaning the furnace, right? So Ul is light, and Nul comes from flame, like a candle, which is called Nul, Ner, candle. So we have light and we have flame from the same angel. And all that depends when he is sent, during the day or at night. Once the angels have stripped Israel away of their garments of glory, they were found naked against their will, as said in Exodus 33:6. So the children of Israel divested themselves of their finery from Mount Horeb. Right? We saw the same thing. Who told you that you were naked? They knew that they were naked because they were also stripped of their garments of glory, Adam and Eve. Vaitnatzlu. Israel sincerely regretted that the garments of glory were removed from them. In modern day Hebrew, to apologize, to regret, to recognize what you did and take responsibility is called lehitnatzel. Ani rotze lehitnatzel befanecha. I would like to apologize before you. That's not sorry, slicha. That's like an oops. I know what I did, and I did wrong. And I want to just come before you and say, I know what I did and I did wrong, and I sincerely apologize. right? That's a humbling. That's why vaitnatzlu, that word is used over there in the Torah. And we know that they did immediately. They immediately regretted what they did, as they were naked just like Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. Our text does not say vayinatzlu, vainatzlu, meaning that they were saved, but rather vaitnatzlu with a taf. They regretted it, and then it was removed from them against their will. They didn't want to lose that. And there are those who say the garments would have removed themselves because, again, this is holiness if they don't abide in the same place. Remember, we discussed that every single thing that is created in this reality is its own entity, right? Every blade of grass, every grain of sand, it's its own entity, and it has its own consciousness. Even inanimate objects, even rocks, they all have neshamas in a sense, okay? Different places. Like we said, every blade of grass, every grain of sand, every drop of rain is its own entity. And they all have their own angels, every single one. Imagine how many angels are in this world, right? That's how back in the day you couldn't change the face of the earth quite literally, because if you knew the names of the angels that command that specific part during that specific time of day, you would call upon their names and then they would start terraforming the earth, if you will. Okay, so not only does it have its own spirit, but each thing has its own ministering angel, like we said, who performs the perfect will of God. The reason some say this would have happened on its own is because of what we read in Genesis 3. God did not remove the garments from them, never said that, but rather they removed themselves, right? They did that and they realized on their own that they were naked. They did not remove the garments said, peace out. So here's a question for you. If they would have removed themselves, why then did God command to remove them in this instance, right? I believe the answer is clear and simple. Israel did not instigate the sin, nor did they partake in it, save for 3,000 men who kissed the idol with all their hearts. We're talking about out of millions, 3,000 kissed the idol. Okay? We know that the Erev Rav were the instigators and behind this whole thing. This was the Erev Rav led by Bilam's sons, Yanis and Yambres, while the 3,000 men were of the Erev Rav as well. We even went through that, ripping out their earrings and their nose rings. Hebrews did not. They didn't go like that back in the day. Okay, they removed their own earrings, their own nose rings, and we discussed that these men who were from Erev Rav, they married the Israelite women. The Hebrews did not wear these things as they kept themselves far away from the Egyptian culture. So why then were all of Israel forced to remove their garments of glory? Because the Erev Rav still married the Israelite women and converted only surface level, meaning by name alone. Yeah, I'm Israel, but I'm still going to do what I do. I'm not going to live according to your laws. People are doing this today. You will pay for that. And through this false conversion, they made all of Israel susceptible to the outside forces of impurity. These cases have been happening since then until this very day. Just like today, you see Jews who act exactly like the nations and only see their Jewishness as a tradition, but not as their identity. It's not who they are. Just like the Jews in the 30s in Germany. They said, first we are Germans, and then we are Jews. Didn't work out for them too well, now did it? But the bottom line is this. It wasn't time for death to be permanently removed from the world, because that's an end-time prophecy, as said in Isaiah 25:8. He has concealed death forever. Bila hamavet lanetzach. And the Lord God shall wipe the tears off of every face. Are we still crying? We are indeed. And so we're not there yet. Very close, but not there yet. And the shame of his people he shall remove from upon the entire earth, for the Lord has spoken. This is for two aspects, by the way. The first one is that we are ashamed who we are before the nations. People are hiding their Jewishness, especially now. Meaning now this prophecy we're seeing is starting to come true, right? People are hiding their Jewishness. Nobody's a proud Jew anymore. If you walk in the streets of wherever, you might get lynched. No problem. We know this is all coming. But the other thing is to remove the shame from us ourselves, because today we don't believe that we're worth anything, really. How so? Why so? We've been studying this. The more we take upon the traditions and live like the nations, the less pride we're going to feel as to exactly who we are. You can't. Both these things, it's light and dark. It can't inhabit the same place. Every time we do Torah and mitzvot, we are putting on these garments of glory, figuratively speaking. And every time we go out and live like the nations with all the traditions, we remove them. It's a back and forth, back and forth. So now if we're saying, okay, wait a minute, I want to go and speak to my dad. How do I cry out to my father? I can't. I know how I've lived. No, I'm going to remove that shame from you. You will see. You're not as bad as you think you are. And even if you are terrible, you're still my firstborn son. And that's why you can always come back. And again, I don't like to skip between the series, but I did in the last class, Ein lanu al mi lishen, rak al Avinu shebashamayim. We have no one to lean upon, only in our Heavenly Father. Again, why Father? Because no matter what you do, no matter how bad you've been, even if you did it on purpose, and you return to your Father, lowered head, say, I'm sorry. He'll say, I know. Bring it in. You see? Father. Okay? Not king, not Lord, not master, not creator. This is where we need a father. Okay. What can we learn from all of this? All the confusion of tov v'ra, good and evil, will be removed, and only truth shall remain. So in the end, it's going to become very clear. When it does, there's no more tshuva, by the way. Once clarity ensues and you can see clearly what is good and what is not, you cannot do tshuva because it won't count for anything because you have all your answers right there, right? Everything up until that last point in time is temporary. So everything can change. Take advantage of this time that you have right now. When it all hits the fan, it's going to be too late. Okay? So really make that change. But the final redemption and the elevated spiritual status that we will receive at that time, this is eternal. We're not falling after that. Bilah hamavet lanetzach. Death is removed permanently with no takebacks. So we have something to look forward to and something to work for and focus on. Please do this, okay? We see the hour. It's getting late. And that's today's class. Y'all have a wonderful rest of the week and Shabbat Shalom.